Have you ever been in a room full of people and yet felt completely alone? That inner silence that speaks louder than any external noise. Have you experienced it? Today we're going to delve into one of the most profound teachings of Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology. How to love your silence so you can truly listen to your soul. Think about it for a moment. We live in a world that constantly bombards us with noise, notifications, others' opinions, social expectations, endless commitments. In the midst of all this chaos, when was the last time you stopped to listen to that inner voice trying to guide you? Jung discovered something fascinating. It's precisely in silence where we find the most valuable answers for our lives. Jung firmly believed that our unconscious is not simply a dark repository of repressed desires, as Freud thought. For him, the unconscious is a source of wisdom, creativity, and purpose. That's where your soul resides, that part of you that knows your true path, even when your conscious mind is lost or confused. But to access this wisdom, you need something we rarely cultivate in our modern society: silence. When you look at your current life, how many of your decisions have truly been yours? How many have been influenced by what others expect from you, by the fear of disappointing, or by the simple inertia of following a path that no longer resonates with you? Jung observed that most of us live borrowed lives, existences shaped more by external expectations than by our true inner desires. The problem isn't just that we ignore our needs, but that over time we lose the ability to recognize them. It's as if we've disconnected the cable that connects us to our soul. And in that state of disconnection, we constantly seek external approval, validation, something to tell us we're on the right path. But Jung warns us, no external validation can replace that internal connection with your authentic self. Let me tell you something you might not know about Jung. During a period of his life, after his break with Freud, Jung went through what he himself called his confrontation with the unconscious. For years, he dedicated himself daily to practices of deep introspection, recording his dreams, visions, and ideas in the famous Red Book. And do you know what he discovered? That only when he allowed himself to be in silence, when he stopped looking for answers in the outside world, could he truly listen to his soul. This personal experience led him to formulate one of his most revolutionary concepts: the process of individuation. This process, according to Jung, is the lifelong journey to become who you truly are, to integrate all parts of yourself, even the shadows, those parts you prefer to ignore or deny, into a coherent and authentic whole. Now, you're probably wondering, how can I begin this journey toward my authentic self? How can I learn to love my silence, to listen to my soul? The answer begins with something seemingly simple, but deeply transformative: the willingness to be alone with yourself. Jung observed that many people fear solitude because it forces them to confront themselves. It's easier to distract yourself with external noise, with others' opinions, with the endless distractions that modern life offers us. But this avoidance comes at an enormous cost: the disconnection from your own soul. Imagine for a moment your mind as a lake. When it's constantly agitated by external winds, worries, others' opinions, fears about the future, it's impossible to see what's at the bottom. But when you allow those winds to calm, when you cultivate inner silence, the surface becomes clear as a mirror, allowing you to see the depths that have always been there. Jung taught us that this silence is not empty. It is a living presence, full of meaning. It's the space where your unconscious can finally communicate with you through symbols, intuitions, and what he called synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem to guide you in a specific direction. Have you ever noticed how, when you're truly at peace with yourself, you begin to attract people and situations that resonate with your essence? This is no coincidence. Jung would explain it as the external manifestation of your internal alignment. It's as if the universe responds to your authenticity, bringing you exactly what you need for your growth. But achieving this alignment requires courage. It requires the willingness to honestly look at your shadows, those parts of you that you've repressed or denied because they don't fit with the image you have of yourself or with what society considers acceptable. Jung described the shadow as the arch-enemy, the monster we all carry within that contains everything we don't want to be. It can manifest as anger, jealousy, selfishness, cowardice, or any other quality you consider negative. The natural tendency is to project these shadows onto others, to see in them what we don't want to see in ourselves. But Jung challenges us. Until you integrate your shadows, until you recognize them as legitimate parts of you, you'll continue living fragmented, unable to truly listen to your soul. This integration process isn't easy. It often involves facing painful memories, admitting uncomfortable truths about yourself, and even questioning fundamental beliefs you've held throughout your life. But Jung assures us that the prize is worth it, a sense of integrity and inner peace that no one can take away from you. Think about the difficult decisions you've faced in your life. Do you remember a time when you knew, deep in your being, which path to take, even when logically it seemed crazy? That's your soul speaking to you through your intuition. Jung believed that intuition is one of our fundamental psychological functions, a form of perception that goes beyond logic and connects us with deeper truths. But to hear this intuition, to tune into the voice of your soul, you need silence. You need to create spaces in your life where you can simply be, without the pressure to do, achieve, or please anyone. It can be as simple as dedicating a few minutes each morning to meditation, taking a walk in nature without your phone, or keeping a journal where you record your most authentic thoughts without censorship. Jung documented his dreams, visions, and reflections obsessively. He knew that our dreams, in particular, are a direct window to the unconscious, a channel through which our soul tries to communicate with us. I invite you to start paying attention to your dreams, to record them as soon as you wake up, and to reflect on the symbols and messages they might contain. Another fascinating concept from Jung is that of archetypes, those primordial images that reside in the collective unconscious and shape our universal human experiences. The hero, the mother, the sage, the shadow, the child. These archetypes appear in different cultures and times because they are fundamental patterns of our psyche. Recognizing them in your life can help you better understand your deep motivations and connect with your unique purpose. Jung taught us that each of us has a purpose, a unique contribution to make to the world. He called it our personal myth, the narrative that gives meaning and direction to our life. Finding this personal myth requires listening to your soul, allowing it to guide you toward experiences that will resonate deeply with you, even when they don't make sense to others. I remember a case of a patient that Jung mentioned in his writings. She was a successful woman by all external standards. She had a brilliant career, an apparently happy family, and social recognition. However, she suffered from deep and recurrent depression. During her therapy with Jung, she discovered that she had been ignoring her true passion for art because it didn't seem practical or respectable. When she finally allowed herself to explore this passion, not only did her depression improve, but she discovered an extraordinary talent that eventually led her to a new, much more satisfying career. This story perfectly illustrates what happens when you finally choose yourself, when you honor the voice of your soul above external expectations. You not only find greater happiness and fulfillment, but you also release a creative potential that might surprise you. Choosing oneself doesn't mean, as many fear, becoming a selfish or inconsiderate person. Quite the opposite. Jung believed that only when we are connected to our authenticity can we truly offer something valuable to the world. When you live from your center, your relationships become more authentic, your work more meaningful, and your presence in the world more impactful. Think about the people who have most inspired you in your life. They're probably individuals who live from their truth, who have found their unique voice and express it without fear. These people don't blindly follow social rules or expectations. They listen to their soul and act accordingly, even when it's difficult. One of the biggest obstacles to listening to our soul is fear. Fear of rejection, of failure, of uncertainty. Jung deeply understood this fear, but reminded us that it's precisely by facing it that we find our true power. What you resist persists, he used to say. When you avoid silence for fear of what you might find in it, you're perpetuating precisely what you fear. Imagine for a moment that you're on your deathbed, looking back on your life. What would you regret more? Having taken risks that sometimes resulted in failures, or never having had the courage to follow your heart? Jung invites us to live in such a way that, at the end of our days, we can sincerely say that we have lived our own life, not the one others expected of us. This is a crucial point that is often misinterpreted in our individualistic culture. Choosing yourself, loving your silence, and listening to your soul doesn't mean isolating yourself from the world or ignoring your responsibilities toward others. Jung deeply recognized our social nature and the importance of community. What he proposed was a different way of relating, from authenticity instead of compliance, from integrity instead of fragmentation. When you connect with your soul, your relationships transform. You no longer look for in others what's missing in yourself. You no longer project your shadows onto them, blaming them for your own faults or insecurities. Instead, you can see them as they are, with their lights and shadows, and love them from a place of fullness rather than need. This is particularly relevant in our closest relationships. Jung observed how many couples fall into destructive patterns because each is projecting onto the other unrecognized aspects of themselves. The man criticizes in his wife the emotionality that he himself represses. The woman resents in her husband the power that she doesn't allow herself to express. These projections create a minefield of misunderstandings and resentments that can only be resolved when each does the inner work of reclaiming their projections and taking responsibility for their own development. Have you ever found yourself repeating the same painful patterns in your relationships? Attracting the same type of partner over and over, or facing the same conflicts regardless of who you're with? Jung called these complexes, those groupings of thoughts, feelings, and emotionally charged memories that influence our behavior from the unconscious. Identifying these complexes requires, once again, silence and honesty with yourself. It requires observing your reactions, especially those that seem disproportionate or out of place, and asking yourself, what's being activated here? What old wound is being touched? This process of self-inquiry can be uncomfortable, but it's incredibly liberating. When you understand the unconscious roots of your behaviors, you can begin to transform them consciously. Jung taught us that we all have a number 2 personality, an aspect of ourselves that remains in the shadow, undeveloped. For men in a patriarchal society, this is often their internal feminine aspect, what Jung called the anima. For women, it's their internal masculine aspect, the animus. Integrating these contrasexual aspects is crucial for our complete development as human beings. When a man rejects his anima, he can become excessively rigid, rational, and disconnected from his emotions and relationships. When a woman represses her animus, she may have difficulties asserting herself, establishing clear boundaries, or pursuing her ambitions in the world. The integration of these aspects doesn't mean that a man should act like a woman, or vice versa, but that each should honor and express the fullness of their being, beyond limiting gender stereotypes. This work of integration, of becoming more complete and authentic, is what Jung called the path of individuation. It's not a destination you arrive at, but a continuous process of growth and self-knowledge that lasts a lifetime. And although it can be challenging, it's also filled with moments of profound joy, wonder, and connection. Imagine you're in the middle of a dark forest. At first, you can only see a couple of meters in front of you, and each step requires courage. But as you advance, your eyes adapt to the darkness. You begin to distinguish shapes, recognize patterns, feel an internal orientation. Eventually, you reach a clearing where the moonlight illuminates your path. This is the process of learning to love your silence, of allowing yourself to be in the darkness long enough for your internal eyes to adjust and begin to see clearly. Jung firmly believed in the transformative power of symbols. For him, a symbol is not simply a sign that represents something else. It's an image that contains psychic energy and can act as a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. Symbols appear in our dreams, in art that moves us, in the synchronicities we experience, and can guide us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves. I invite you to pay attention to the symbols that appear repeatedly in your life. It might be an animal you see frequently, a motif that attracts you without apparent reason, or even a word or phrase that seems to follow you. These symbols can be messages from your soul, trying to guide you toward your next step on the path of individuation. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Jung's thinking was his rejection of the idea that we must overcome or eliminate our negative aspects. Instead, he invited us to see these aspects as energies that need to be integrated and redirected. For example, the anger you feel when someone crosses your boundaries is not bad. It's a vital energy that, when properly channeled, can help you protect yourself and assert yourself in a healthy way. This approach frees us from the exhausting task of trying to be perfect according to external standards and allows us instead to work with all our energies in a creative and constructive way. Perfection, as Jung pointed out, doesn't consist of being only light without shadow, but in the harmonious integration of both. As you advance on this path of self-knowledge and authenticity, you'll begin to notice significant changes in your life. Relationships that used to leave you exhausted may transform or naturally dissolve. Activities you used to enjoy may lose their appeal, while new interests emerge. Unexpected opportunities that seem perfectly aligned with your true self may arise. Jung called these meaningful coincidences synchronicities, and saw them as signs that you're on the right path. It's important to remember that this journey is not linear. There will be moments of clarity and moments of confusion, periods of rapid advancement, and times when it seems you're going backward. Jung reminded us that this is completely normal. The path to the soul is not a straight line, but a spiral that sometimes seems to take us back to where we started, but always at a deeper level of understanding. In our results-oriented culture, we often get frustrated when we don't see immediate progress or when we face obstacles. But Jung invites us to adopt a different perspective, to see each challenge, each crisis, as an opportunity to deepen our understanding and strengthen our connection with our authentic self. One of the most significant crises many people face is what Jung called the midlife crisis. Around the ages of 35-40, or sometimes later, many people begin to question the choices they've made, the values they've pursued, and the meaning of their life. This crisis can be painful, but also incredibly valuable, as it forces us to look within ourselves and rediscover what truly matters. If you're going through such a crisis, or any period of deep questioning, Jung would advise you not to run away. Don't distract yourself with more activity, more noise, more of the same that no longer works. Instead, dare to enter into silence, to truly listen to what your soul is trying to tell you, because it's precisely in these moments of crisis where the seeds of your true self have the opportunity to germinate. It's fascinating how, when we begin to genuinely listen to our soul, decisions that previously seemed impossible become clear. People who have spent years trapped in jobs they hate suddenly find the courage to change careers. Relationships that have been maintained out of habit or fear finally come to their natural end, making space for more authentic connections. This process of internal alignment creates a kind of magnetism. You begin to attract people, situations, and opportunities that resonate with your true self. Not because you're actively seeking them or manipulating circumstances, but because the energy you project into the world has fundamentally changed. You're vibrating at the frequency of your authenticity, and the world responds accordingly. Jung observed this phenomenon over and over in his clinical practice and in his own life. He called it the principle of synchronicity, the occurrence of significantly related events that cannot be explained by conventional laws of causality. You're thinking about a friend you haven't seen in years, and that same afternoon you receive a call from them. You're contemplating a career change, and suddenly a perfect opportunity appears without you having looked for it. These are not simply accidents or coincidences, they are manifestations of your connection with a deeper level of reality. This understanding leads us to another fundamental concept in Jung's thinking. The idea that we are all connected to a collective unconscious, a reservoir of experiences, symbols and images that we share as a human species. When you connect deeply with your own soul, you're also connecting with this collective dimension, and that can manifest as a sensation of deeper meaning, purpose, and connection with something greater than yourself. Many people who have gone through this process describe a sense of coming home, of finally finding their place in the world. Not because external circumstances are perfect, but because they have found a stable internal center from which they can navigate both the joys and difficulties of life with grace and authenticity. This internal center is what Jung called the self, with a capital S, the deepest core of our psyche, which integrates all the contradictory aspects of our personality into a coherent whole. The self is not something we create or develop. It's something we discover as we remove the layers of conditioning, expectations, and false identities we've accumulated throughout our lives. And here we come to one of the most beautiful paradoxes of Jung's thinking. To truly find yourself, you must be willing to lose yourself. You must be willing to let go of who you think you are, the stories you've told yourself, the roles you've assumed, to discover who you really are in your deepest essence. This process of losing yourself to find yourself can be frightening. It can feel like a small death, and in a sense, it is. The death of a false self to make way for the birth of a more authentic self. But as Jung reminds us, all great transformations involve some kind of death and rebirth. The caterpillar must completely dissolve in the chrysalis before emerging as a butterfly. Are you willing to enter that space of transformation? Are you ready to love your silence enough to truly listen to what your soul has been trying to tell you? This is the challenge that Jung presents to us, and also the promise that on the other side of that silence, of that willingness to face yourself honestly, there is a life of greater authenticity, meaning, and joy waiting for you. The path won't be easy. There will be moments when you doubt, when the voice of your ego or the expectations of others will try to pull you away from your truth. But if you persist, if you keep choosing yourself over and over again, you'll discover that each step brings you closer to that sense of fullness and purpose that we all yearn for deep in our being. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Jung deeply believed in the power of conscious community, of surrounding yourself with people who are also committed to their own growth and authenticity. These connections can provide support, reflection, and encouragement in difficult moments, reminding you that although the path is unique for each person, many are walking beside you, seeking their own truth. Your life is too valuable to live disconnected from your essence. Your soul has unique gifts to offer the world, perspectives and talents that only you can express in the way you do. When you refuse to listen to your inner voice, when you choose noise over silence, you not only deprive yourself of the life you could have, but you also deprive the world of your unique contribution. Jung expressed it beautifully when he said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." I invite you today to awaken, to look into your heart, and to have the courage to follow what you find there. Start with small moments of silence each day. You don't need to retreat to a cave in the Himalayas, although Jung greatly valued periods of retreat. You can simply begin by turning off your phone for an hour, sitting in nature without distractions, or dedicating a few minutes each morning to quiet reflection before immersing yourself in the noise of the day. In these moments of stillness, practice deep listening, not just to your thoughts, which are often simply mental noise, but to the sensations in your body, to the emotions that arise, to the images or intuitions that appear when you allow your mind to quiet. This is the voice of your soul, which often communicates not through clear words, but through sensations, symbols, and intuitions. Keep a journal of these moments. Jung was a great advocate of writing and art as ways to dialogue with the unconscious. Write down your dreams, your reflections, your unanswered questions. Draw or paint what you feel, even if you don't consider yourself to have artistic talent. This process is not about creating masterpieces, but about establishing a bridge between your conscious mind and the depths of your soul. And finally, act based on what you discover. Self-knowledge without action is sterile. When your soul shows you a path, when it points out something that needs to change in your life, honor that wisdom by taking concrete steps, however small. Each action aligned with your inner truth strengthens your connection with your soul and brings you one step closer to a life of authenticity and purpose. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel a spark of recognition in some part of your being, take it as a sign. Your soul is responding, it's recognizing a truth that you already knew at some deep level. Don't ignore that response. Let it guide you toward your next step, whatever that may be. And remember, this channel exists precisely to support you on that journey of self-discovery and transformation. Each week we share ideas, practices, and reflections designed to help you deepen your connection with your authentic self. If you're not yet part of our community, I invite you to subscribe right now and activate notifications so you don't miss any message that might be just what you need to hear at a particular moment. Share this video with someone you think might benefit from hearing it. Sometimes the right message comes through a friend or loved one who unconsciously recognizes what we need. Your comments are also invaluable. Share your experience, your questions, or your own reflections on how you've learned to love your silence and listen to your soul. Your voice is important and might be exactly what someone else in our community needs to hear. Before saying goodbye, I want to leave you with one last reflection from Jung. Your life is what you have been waiting for all your life. You are what you have been looking for. Everything you yearn for, peace, purpose, love, connection, is already within you, waiting to be discovered in the sacred silence of your own soul. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Thank you for having the courage to look within yourself. And remember, when you love your silence, you begin to hear the whispers of your soul. And those whispers can completely change your life. See you in the next video, and until then, may you find moments of precious silence in the midst of life's noise.